Welcome to planet Sol 3, also commonly known as Earth. Now this is something very different to my usual content, but since you clicked on it, I assume you understand that. So, I have a couple of thoughts on various geo-things, be that geographic, geopolitical or geotechnological, and I find two-dimensional maps rather distorting when talking about global scales. This might become a series of sharing my thoughts with proper 3D presentation, maybe even educating a bit. The first topic I want to tackle is probably the most global scale: continents. You might know that there are several different definitions of continents, ranging from 4 to 7, and all being rather inconsistent or quite useless, because we use continent to describe large areas of the planet's surface and distinguish between different large areas. Therefore, something like Afro-Eurasia is quite useless when it single-handedly composes half of all land, or the inconsistent definition of Europe being defined partly by mountains as borders. Now this is where the globe comes truly into play, because I wouldn't use any mountain as a continental border. Any mountain range might be large for humans when standing in front of them, but on a continental scale, the surface of the Earth is very smooth. Here you can see the Caucasus, highest range in Europe. Now here the Alps. And finally the Himalayas. The skin of an orange has more undulation than the Earth's surface. Now I will try to define continents with a consistent way, but also a useful outcome. But first let's define landmass as dry land that is surrounded by water, navigable to most ocean-going vessels. This landmass definition leaves room for human interaction, as we can separate a landmass into two if we so desire. And we have done so 2 times already. Once here, with the Suez Canal separating the largest landmass into 2, and once here, with the Panama Canal separating another landmass into 2. Now a continent will be a landmass, but only the largest landmasses are relevant. So we need to find a lower boundary. To reach a useful scale, we need a minimum land area, which could be defined as 1% of all dry land, equaling 1.5 million square kilometers. But of course that is arbitrary, though all boundary definitions will be. Looking at the landmasses in question, though, we will find some significant gaps in size. The landmass of Australia is 3 times as large as the next one, which is Greenland. But Greenland itself is also 3 times as large as the next one, New Guinea. Whereas New Guinea cannot clear so much room, with Borneo, Sumatra, Baffin Island and Madagascar all being at least half the size of New Guinea itself. So all of these would not be useful continents. Greenland, on the other hand, would not only have that clear gap, but also be larger than the aforementioned 1.5 million square kilometers. It just looks small in its neighborhood. An example. Most would see New Zealand as an island next to Australia as a related continent. But if we move Greenland to that spot, the impression changes. In such isolation, it is so large that it would seem strange counting it as an island. Even more so if we moved it to Hawaii's location. Some might say, but Greenland is on the North American tectonic plate, or it's on the continental shelf. Which is true, but Eurasia and North America are also on the same shelf. And New Zealand has its own tectonic plate different to Australia's. So both these attributes seem strange to define continents from. And lastly, the Davis Strait, separating America from Greenland, is the size of the Mediterranean Sea. So there is significant space in between, just that not so many people live nearby. With these arguments, I would define a continent like this. Continent: a landmass that has at least 1% of the total land area of the planet. This means a continent first of all has to be a landmass, so it has to be completely surrounded by water, by navigable water for seafaring ships. And it has to be at least 1% of the total land area of the planet to be at the scale of a continent. And now, just for completion, let's define an island as any landmass that is not a continent. Furthermore, though, we order most islands towards a continent to group all the land nicely together. For this, I would propose an addition to the island rule. An island belongs to the continent to which the closest larger landmass also belongs. Why so complicated? Well, look at Bali. If we would just say the island belongs to the closest continent, in this case that would be Australia, or as I prefer to call it, Oceania. Even though, like right next to it, the big island of Java would belong to Eurasia. And most would agree, though, that Bali just looks like an extension of Java. Taking the continental divide right between the two seems not very useful for grouping landmasses together. With the rule as proposed, Bali though has to look for a larger landmass nearby, which in this case is Java itself. And Java already belongs to Eurasia, so Bali automatically belongs to Eurasia as well, even though Australia would be closer. Now, with these three rules of a landmass in general, what is a continent, and what is an island and to which continent does it belong, we will arrive at a grand total of 7 continents, without any special cases. In descending order, with all nearby islands included, these are Eurasia, Africa, North America, South America, Antarctica, Oceania, and Polaria, as I would call the continent of Greenland and surrounding islands. Most of these are nice to handle and good to describe a place on the surface now. But while Polaria and Oceania only make up a few percent of the surface, Eurasia comprises a whopping 37% of all land. And for these big areas, another already existing term currently only used for the former British Raj should be wider adopted: subcontinent. Here you can see my outline for the subcontinent of Europe. Notice the difference in its eastern border. But defining subcontinents is for another time. Tell me if I overlooked something, or you disagree with this uniformly definition. And if you want more of this style of content, leave a like. Wish you a wonderful day. Cheers.